I invite Poland to consider Mombasa and Lamu ports as possible logistical hubs for exporting products, including grains, to the region and beyond. I urge President Duda to partner with us through public-private and government-to-government partnerships to explore the vast market in the agricultural sector, particularly in post-harvest value addition, aiming to conclusively address food security. On labor mobility, we discussed the possibility of developing a labor mobility framework to expand job opportunities available for our highly skilled young labor force while narrowing labor deficit in Poland. This is an area that a win-win outcome is a reality. We have abundant, highly skilled professional labor, and Poland is a labor deficit country, and therefore we can establish a win-win framework. We look forward to fast-tracking this so that we can mutually benefit from this relationship. On the multilateral front, I sought President Duda's support for Kenya's global agenda on climate action, biodiversity protection, and the need to accelerate green growth. We agreed to collaborate within the Economic and Social Council, of which Poland is a member, to address the global dialogue in financing for development, promote inclusivity and equality, and team up to achieve sustainable development goals. I also sought Poland's support in championing a fair and just multilateral system with a more inclusive global financing architecture. I take this opportunity once more to thank His Excellency President Andrzej Duda for the fruitful engagement and measurable outcomes achieved today. I reaffirm Kenya's commitment to deepening and broadening our relations with Poland and look forward to many more engagements in the near future. Your Excellency, allow me to say one more thing, that we have the only UN headquarters in the Global South here in Nairobi, hosting both the United Nations office in Nairobi, the UN Habitat Office, and also UNEP. And we are asking for your partnership in supporting the Secretary General's request for the modernization of facilities in Nairobi so that they can be at the same level as the other offices in New York, Geneva, and elsewhere. Mr. President, again, on behalf of the people and government of Kenya, welcome to Nairobi, and it's been a pleasure hosting you. Karibu, Mr. President.
Your Excellency, Mr. President, honorable ministers, ambassadors, esteemed gathered guests. First, let me express my warm gratitude to Mr. President for inviting here to Kenya, to Nairobi, for his invitation to pay this historic visit. This is the first visit by the President of Poland to Kenya after 61 years since the establishment of diplomatic relations between our countries. Hence, this is a crucially important moment, and to me personally, it is a huge honor. Once again, Mr. President, I would like to say thank you on my behalf, on behalf of my wife and all the members of the Polish delegation. But I am happy, Mr. President, also because this is not just a visit of courtesy. This is a visit which brings with it a big potential of economic cooperation for the future. I firmly believe in this for both our countries. We talked with Mr. President today. We had the tete-a-tete meeting, and then we had a bilateral meeting with our delegations. During those meetings, we discussed our economic relations. We discussed the future directions of developing these relations and the perspectives which exist in this respect between our two countries. So let me stress very strongly that back in October 2023, there was an economic forum held here in Nairobi between Poland and Kenya, which brought together a lot of persons interested in cooperating, entrepreneurs. This forum was co-organized by our Polish Trade and Investment Agency. And today, together with Mr. President, we will attend another edition of a business forum meeting. Some people call it a round table or a business round table. And there, our entrepreneurs, under the patronage of presidents, will discuss the possibilities of cooperation and developing relations. Speaking about the sectors, there are at least a few of them. Just a moment ago, we witnessed the signing of very important memoranda shaping future cooperation, among others, in the field of agriculture and rural development. Today, we discussed together with Mr. President at length the milk industry, the production of milk, the potential development possibilities here. I presented to His Excellency the situation on our milk market and our milk production capacities in Poland. Also, milk processing. I shared our experiences. I said that Poland is one of the world's biggest producers and exporters of, among others, powder milk. So, having said that, we are able to share our vast expertise and experiences. We have those experiences spanning tens of years, dozens of years in terms of modern milk production. But we also discussed cooperation in other sectors of the agriculture. We also touched upon cooperation in the sector of modern technologies, environment protection. We also discussed various forms of winning energy from renewable sources, be it hydropower plants or be it wind farms or be it solar energy. I informed Mr. President about our transition process according to the commitments that we made connected with our presence in the European Union. We are making those commitments in climate protection. We are planning to transform our energy sector. We plan to develop nuclear energy in Poland. This is an indispensable element necessary for implementing European climate policy in the future. But I also mentioned that we are planning an energy mix in the future with a big share also of renewable energy. These were the topics that we discussed with Mr. President. We also talked about geothermal energy. I gave an account to Mr. President of an investment which we have in Poland right now in the Podhale region in the south. The deepest drill well is being carried out. Our engineers, our geologists are exploring and searching at the level of even 7,000 meters. They are searching for water with such temperature which will make it possible not only to power households and utility buildings with geothermal energy, to provide heating for buildings, to provide hot water, but also, ladies and gentlemen, to make sure that a geothermal power plant can be built in Poland. To build such a plant, we need to have the temperature of water exceeding 100 degrees, and we hope that such hot water will be found to that aim. So I also told Mr. President about those research activities which are going on right now. But apart from that, we also discussed modern tax policy, closing gaps in the public finance sector, in the tax sector. That is why the memorandum was signed on cooperation on tax solidarity, and we also discussed, ladies and gentlemen, a modern finance sector, banking sector, the so-called fintech. I shared our experiences in Poland in the sector of e-banking, which is well developed in our country. It is one of the top levels in Europe, absolutely. So I shared all our achievements and experiences that we're able to share on this one. We also discussed, ladies and gentlemen, the development of the health sector here in Kenya, where Poland right now has a cooperation in this regard. I spoke about our experiences in terms of the construction of the Polish healthcare system. I spoke about the combination. On the one hand, we have got state-owned health service, on the other hand, private health service sector. And I also said how this is developing and how general access to health services is being given to the population in Poland. These topics here today are an element of contemporary activities, day-to-day activities, which we're implementing, also in terms of development in Kenya. And these were the topics of our discussion today as well. These are the issues which we will be discussing also tomorrow. Tomorrow I will witness the work and the exercises of the local rescue services of firefighters, among others, where Poland is also sharing its experiences and supporting the development of Kenyan services. So we are active and we are deepening our relations right now. Ladies and gentlemen, speaking about the difficult issues, although not in our relations but in our neighborhood, we mentioned the unrest in Africa, also in this part of Africa. We mentioned the war situations which Kenya is seeing in its neighborhood. I also informed Mr. President on the situation behind our eastern border, which results from the Russian aggression against Ukraine. I described the situation today. I also described our efforts, how we are welcoming Ukrainian refugees, and how from our close point of view as neighbors, this Russian aggression against Ukraine looks like, how dramatic consequences it has. I also described all these things to Mr. President. I also spoke about the impact of Russian aggression on the global food market, on the global energy market. I also spoke about the crisis which hit us 1 year ago when Russia turned off gas supplies that we were receiving through the Yamal gas pipeline. I also described our diversification efforts and how we managed to deal with that very difficult situation thanks to having an LNG terminal in Świnoujście today, thanks to having gas interconnectors, also thanks to the fact that we have built a new gas pipeline from the Norwegian shelf through Denmark to Poland. All these actions made it possible for us to help our energy sector and to rescue our energy sector and the production sector of gas. But we were hit by increases in prices for energy. We had to introduce a special policy in that respect. And these are the things which we also raised during our meeting with Mr. President today. I invited Mr. President to visit Poland. We hope that His Excellency will visit us. We hope that it will give us an opportunity to show also to the farmers and to representatives of the Ministry of Agriculture from Kenya how our agricultural sector works, how it looks like, and also the milk sector, the dairy sector, what it looks like. So today, these were the main topics of our conversation. There is still a couple of points on our agenda today, especially the most important item on the agenda is the meeting with representatives of the business circles, and we are going to have that meeting soon. Thank you very much, Mr. President, for inviting us. Thank you for the presence also of the ministers accompanying Mr. President. I do hope that this visit, which is spectacular, because this is the first visit paid by the Polish president here in Kenya, I hope that it will also be a breakthrough in terms of our further cooperation and in terms of a very strong impulse, the first very strong impulse to have economic cooperation, also to develop cooperation in science and research. But I hope that the second impulse will be the visit by His Excellency Mr. President in Poland, in Warsaw. And right now we are waiting for it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Excellencies. With your permission, we'll now take 2 questions from members of the press. We'll start with a journalist from Poland, followed by a journalist from Kenya. Remember to identify yourself, the media house you represent, then to your question. Over to you.
Thank you. Dzień dobry, Agnieszka Drążkiewicz.
Agnieszka Drążkiewicz, Polish Information Radio and Polish Information Agency. Mr. President, you spoke with the Kenyan president about our point of view concerning Russian aggression against Ukraine and also the consequences, the result of that aggression. Did you see an understanding during that conversation, an understanding of the Kenyan leader? And also another question I have to ask, our follow-up question. I would like to ask you about the Friday interview that you gave. Many politicians in Poland took it very negatively, what you said about the Crimea. How would you comment that, Mr. President? First of all, indeed, we raised that topic, as I have just mentioned, in my conversation with Mr. President. I was not really presenting the Polish point of view in terms of the war in Ukraine, in terms of the Russian aggression against Ukraine. What I was doing was presenting to Mr. President and to the ministers how the neighbors are seeing it. In other words, if we look at the closest neighborhood of Ukraine, what the picture of the situation is, which was happening and is still happening. I said that that was a totally unprovoked aggression. I said that Ukraine did not provoke Russia in any way whatsoever, and that indeed we are seeing a full-scale aggression. I said to Mr. President that I visited Kiev a few hours, literally, before the start of the Russian aggression. I went there on the 23rd of February, and then it was the last meeting that I had with President Volodymyr Zelensky before the outbreak of the war. And I also described the visits that I paid later, after Russians were repelled from the areas around Kiev, from Borodyanka, from Bucha, from Irpin. I also told Mr. President that I was able to see with my own eyes what the Russian aggression caused. I saw destroyed houses, I saw ruined human lives. I was able to see the wreckages of Russian tanks and military vehicles that had been destroyed. I also saw the remains of Russian soldiers. So I described that war the way it really is, the way it really looks like. Mr. President also shared with me his experiences in terms of the conflicts which Kenya is seeing around itself in the neighborhood, the unrest in Sudan and in other countries, which are going on here as well. Africa, unfortunately, in the last dozens of years, has experienced a whole number of bloody, horrific conflicts and wars. And this problem of the war of aggression, which is connected also with attacking civilian population, is well known here in Africa. And whenever you raise this topic, you don't have to look for an understanding for a long time. Mr. President knew very well what I was talking about when I was speaking about the destruction of civilian homes, when I was describing the whole villages wiped out in eastern Ukraine, when there is no life today, actually. Everybody was forced to flee, or they were killed, because that is the reality of this war. That is the reality of the Russian aggression against Ukraine. Now, ladies and gentlemen, about my Friday interview, please consider the convention of that interview. It was not a tense conversation with a politician. It was just an interview which we treated partly, of course, partly as a peaceful, calm conversation, unofficial conversation concerning different topics, also not serious topics, but the topic raised by the journalist indeed was very serious. And to a certain extent, I was thinking about different discussions that I hear happening in the international arena, but concerning our position on the Russian aggression against Ukraine and concerning the way this war has to come to an end, I want to stress the word has to. It is the restoration of the primacy of international law. The primacy of international law has to be restored. It means that Ukraine comes back to its internationally recognized borders, to full control over the territories which are internationally recognized territories of Ukraine. Also Crimea, and I want to stress this very strongly, because let us remember that the Russian aggression against Ukraine, which as a matter of fact started in 2014, started among others from the occupation of Crimea. And that occupation of Crimea is still going on. Because of that, Russia has to leave the Ukrainian territories which it is occupying. Ukraine has to regain control over all its internationally recognized territories, and such should be the end of this war. To make sure that international law is respected as the biggest guarantee of peace for the future. Because this is something I want to stress very robustly. Russia cannot win this war, because if Russia wins this war, then Russia will attack once again. We Poles are saying these words with full responsibility. We know what Russian imperialism is. We experienced it over last centuries. A couple of times we were under the Russian occupation, under the Russian partition for 123 years during the Russia of Tsars. Then we were part of the Russian sphere of influence, and we know what Russian imperialism is. The Russian imperialism is being reborn today. One of its demonstrations is the aggression against Ukraine. It is a clear and unambiguous demonstration, and this Russian imperialism has to be stopped, and it has to be reprimanded or scolded, and it will be scolded when Russia is forced to withdraw from the occupied Ukrainian lands, and when Russian war criminals are punished. This is the fundamental question right now, and this is my position on this issue. This is my position that I have presented everywhere internationally since the beginning of this conflict. And in this respect, nothing has changed, absolutely nothing. And this is also the position that I was presenting today to Mr. President in our conversation.
One question from a journalist from Kenya. If we have none, do we have any? That marks the end of our joint press briefing by Your Excellencies. Your Excellencies, you're welcome to retreat. Thank you.
Dziękuję bardzo.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.